Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into your source material today for a deep dive into global tourism. Our focus. Well, which countries are seeing the most visitors and what key insights can we pull from that data about the world of travel right now?
That's right. We've been looking at an article that lays out a pretty clear ranking of the most visited countries for 2024, and it digs into some significant trends impacting the industry. So our goal is to pull out the most important nuggets from this info and help you understand the current landscape, what's really going on.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we get to the popular spots, why does knowing this stuff even matter? Which countries get the most visitors?
Yeah.
The material makes it clear this isn't just like trivia, right? The tourism sector is a huge player in the world economy.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is the prediction highlighted for 2024. The World Travel and Tourism Council, WTTC, they anticipate this year will hit an all-time high. For travel and tourism, that is in terms of economic output, forecasting $11.1 trillion globally. Yeah. To put that into perspective, the article notes this would be $770 billion more than 2023. So this really solidifies tourism's position as a global economic powerhouse. It contributes, as the source points out, one in every $10 worldwide.
One in $10.
Oh.
That's a staggering figure. It really shows the sheer scale. And the material emphasizes how much travel is bouncing back. You mentioned the WTTC analysis. It suggests that, 142 out of 185 nations looked at are expected to surpass their historical national records in 2024. Travel is definitely back.
Big time.
A major comeback.
So with all that activity, all these record-breaking forecasts, who are the main destinations? Where is everyone going?
This source gives us a pretty clear ranking based on estimated international arrival numbers for 2024.
It does. The article lists the top 10 countries by the number of visitors expected this year. Leading the list is France, projected to receive 89.4 million arrivals.
Okay.
Spain is second with 83.7 million. The United States of America comes in third at 79.3 million.
Still big numbers.
Oh, yeah. Fourth is China with 65.7 million. Italy is fifth, 64.5 million. Then Turkey, sixth, 51.2 million.
Right.
Mexico is seventh at 45 million.
Right.
Thailand is eighth with 39.8 million. Germany, ninth, 39.6 million. And rounding out the top 10 is the United Kingdom with 39.4 million arrivals.
Okay, that gives us the full picture of the sort of the major players. Given our focus today and what the material really emphasizes, let's zoom in on that top 5. The countries attracting the absolute highest numbers this year.
Great idea. Let's dive into what makes these places such magnets, what the source says about their appeal.
First up, number 1, France. 89.4 million arrivals. What does the article say makes it the most visited nation in 2024?
Well, the source points specifically to its incredible variety. That seems to be the key driver. It highlights France as home to 45 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, plus, iconic cities like Paris, beautiful landscapes like the Loire Valley, and important artistic hubs, too, like Toulouse and Bordeaux.
Right, so it's not just Paris.
Not at all. The material goes beyond the cities, emphasizing the appeal of its beaches, ski resorts, and interestingly, peaceful rural regions noted specifically for eco-friendly travelers. It even mentions these charming, officially honored communities and hundreds of remarkable gardens. So the insight here seems to be that this sheer breadth of offerings, it caters to practically every type of traveler. That's what keeps it at the top.
Okay, that makes sense. Number 2 then, Spain. 83.7 million arrivals. The source mentions its resilience, especially after that drop in 2020.
Yes, the article notes Spain's consistent strength. It was actually second for 3 years straight before the pandemic hit in 2020. What's highlighted is its resilience and also its repeated ranking right at the top of the World Economic Forum's Travel and Tourist Competitiveness Index. It outperformed 140 other nations multiple times.
Wow.
The simple takeaway the source offers is just describing Spain as like one of the coolest and most stylish countries globally, suggesting its appeal is maybe cultural as much as anything else.
Right, a certain vibe. Okay, the USA is number 3, 79.3 million visitors. What does the material highlight there? What's the core appeal?
The key phrase the article uses is infinite number of tourist attractions. Bit of an exaggeration maybe, but you get the point.
Yeah, infinite.
It emphasizes the nation's, diverse environment and widely recognizable cities. You find everything from New York streets to California shores, Florida theme parks. The source lists popular spots like LA, Chicago, Miami for culture, or Hollywood glamour.
Sure.
And for nature lovers, it specifically calls out the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, and those beaches again, Florida and California. So the insight drawn here is that the sheer scale and variety mean it attracts travelers with really different interests. Urban, nature, family fun, it's all there.
Makes sense. Okay, number 4, China. 65.7 million arrivals. The source points to its vastness in history.
Yeah, the article describes China as an intriguing place because of its vast terrain, deep history, and also its rapid urbanization. It's that mix. It lists iconic historical attractions, Great Wall, Forbidden City, but also modern stuff like the Bund in Shanghai. For nature seekers, it points to places like Guilin, Zhangjiajie, the Yangtze River. And for culture, the material highlights Xin's Terracotta Army, Lijiang's Old City, lots of rich historical detail. So the takeaway from the source is that China offers this unique blend of ancient wonders and really fast modern development across a huge area.
Fascinating blend. Okay, rounding out our top 5 deep dive, Italy. 64.5 million arrivals. Italy just feels like a timeless favorite, doesn't it? What does the source say keeps bringing people back?
The material attributes Italy's enduring appeal to its amazing blend of art, culture, history, and food pretty much covers
Just
it.
can't argue with that.
Right. It mentions Vatican City as a key hub for arts, spirituality, historic sites like the Colosseum, the Roman Forum for that glimpse into the past. Venice is highlighted for its, charm and canals. The Amalfi Coast for just breathtaking beauty.
Oh, yeah.
Florence gets called out for Renaissance buildings, famous artwork. And of course, maybe the biggest draw for many. The source includes Italian food, gelato, fine wines, spaghetti, pizza. A major draw for food lovers.
Definitely.
The insight here is Italy's success comes from that potent combination world-class culture and food everyone loves.
Okay, that deep dive into the top 5 gives a great sense of where the crowds are headed this year. Very insightful. And here's where it gets, really impactful looking back just a couple of years. The source really drives home the severe disruption COVID caused.
Yes, the data presented is quite stark. It really is. The article notes 2020 was the worst year ever for tourism, period. Reporting 1 billion fewer travelers globally than in 2019, that's a massive 74% decline.
1 billion fewer.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
It highlights the estimated economic costs mentioned by the UNWTO. $4.5 trillion lost to the sector in 2020 alone. That led to 62 million jobs lost or in danger, and $1.3 trillion in lost income.
Wow.
The material points out these effects were particularly devastating for nations whose GDP really depended heavily on tourism. It shows just how vulnerable those economies were.
That's a truly massive hit to the global economy, to livelihoods, just huge. The source mentions that while forecasts were maybe hopeful for recovery by late 2021,
Yeah, initially.
the persistent nature of the pandemic really dashed those hopes.
Yeah.
Most projections from late 2021 suggested recovery to pre-COVID levels wouldn't happen until at least 2023.
Exactly. It took longer than people hoped. But the key point of recovery the article makes now is that travel is expected to recover fully by the end of this year, 2024, which lines up directly with those earlier WTTC predictions we talked about 2024 being a record-breaking year.
Yeah.
So it highlights a really rapid bounce back after that severe downturn.
A V-shaped recovery, almost, for the sector overall. Okay, looking ahead then, beyond this year, what does the material say about the future, the trajectory of global tourism?
The source cites a McKinsey report that predicts trends out to 2030. It anticipates domestic travel will keep increasing, about 3% yearly, reaching an estimated 19 billion hotel nights annually, which is a lot of nights.
Yeah.
International travel is also expected to rise, reaching its sort of historical average of 9 billion nights over the same period, and total travel-related spending predicted to follow a similar trend, forecast to hit $8.6 trillion this year, 2024, and expected to keep growing.
So continued growth is projected pretty much across the board in the coming years. Sounds positive. But the report mentioned in the source also points out 3 main issues, or maybe considerations, for the industry looking ahead to 2030.
Right. This raises important points for, anyone involved in tourism or just interested in where it's heading. First, the McKinsey report notes that most money spent on travel is actually local, domestic. So it suggests stakeholders should really understand and tap into that domestic potential before focusing mainly on foreign visitors.
Focus local first.
Yeah. Then after that, intra-regional travel visitors from nearby countries, that's the next biggest category. So focus there too. Second, the source markets are changing. Traditional markets, North America, Western Europe, still important. But sources of outbound tourism are growing really rapidly in places like Eastern Europe, India, Southeast Asia. The report indicates this diversification is a major factor to watch.
Okay, new travelers coming from new places.
Exactly. And third, the article highlights the report's warning that future popular destinations might not be the ones you expect. New locations are strategically working to attract international tourists, so the map could shift.
Changing markets, emerging destinations. That's a fascinating shift to watch, definitely. The source also mentions one major issue identified by the UN panel of tourist experts that's hitting the industry right now.
Yes, the material notes that the primary issue currently being felt is inflation, specifically in travel and tourism, high costs for flights, for hotels, lodging in general. This is presented as a significant challenge, even with those strong growth forecasts.
Right, the cost of living impacting travel costs too.
Sure.
Makes sense. So, pulling all this together then, what does all this information mean for you listening out there, whether you're actively planning your next trip or just curious about how the world connects through travel?
Well, understanding these trends really helps you grasp the massive scale of global travel and its huge economic importance. Those trillion-dollar figures, the 1 in $10 statistic,
Right.
it's big. Knowing which countries are most visited gives you insights into popular places, obviously. But as the source points out, it also highlights the potential of maybe less visited emerging destinations and the continued importance of domestic and regional travel, maybe exploring closer to home.
Right.
It encourages you really to think about your own travel plans in a broader context, perhaps considering more intra-regional trips or exploring destinations outside that top 10 list, or just being mindful of the impact of inflation on your travel budget, which is flagged as a current issue, something to factor in.
Good practical takeaways there. Okay, to leave you with something to think about. Considering the dramatic impact of the pandemic, followed by this predicted record-breaking year in 2024, and then continued growth forecast out to 2030, what balance does global tourism need to strike between driving all that economic growth and ensuring sustainability, especially as new destinations emerge and the places tourists come from continue to shift?
That's a critical question for the road ahead, indeed. Lots to think about there.
That wraps up our deep dive into the world's most visited countries based on this source material. We hope this gave you some valuable insights into the global tourism landscape and where things seem to be headed.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for this exploration of the data. It's been interesting.
Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.